Hi guys, I thought I'd come on here to share with you some downloads that I've received this weekend. And these downloads are about the ego, the soul, and mental health. And as I was receiving these downloads, before I received them, I had a very intrusive thought, very ego based, very fear based. And I observed the thought from a soul level, from my perspective, from my conscious awareness. I saw the thought, I acknowledged the thought, but I didn't believe the thought. And I thanked the mind, the psyche, the ego for providing me with the thought. And then I said, no, thank you. And by that, I was able to disconnect from my ego. During that process, the ego, part of my ego died. Within that, I received downloads about the ego. And so what I heard was that when we come down to earth as a soul and we inherit this vehicle, the human body, we not only inherit the human body, we inherit the mind. And a side effect of the mind, or a symptom of the mind, is the ego. Now, the ego is something that the soul has to learn to dance with for the rest of human experience. And that's where we learn most of our lessons as a soul. The ego is quite a heavy, dense energy, and the soul's quite a light energy. And learning to live with the ego, but not fuse with it, is something that we must learn as a soul, and it can help us ascend higher. And through ascending higher, we can have ego deaths, which means part of the ego disappears, and we connect more with our soul and our levels of consciousness. And what I saw during these downloads was this body, a human body, and within it was the ego, and the ego was like this dark mist. And as I saw it overtaking the body, and again, the ego represents fear, anxiety, whereas the soul represents love and oneness. As I saw it take over the body, I saw the element of the soul, the light, still there, despite the fact the ego was so much fused with the soul, or fused with the body, that it took over everything. It took over people's cognitions, their behaviors, where they lost so much of themselves that they became the ego rather than the soul. And what I was getting was that even though we can feel like we have lost every part of ourselves and we become so fused with that ego, the soul is always still there, is always there. And that just shows how there is hope. There is hope for us to reconnect back with our soul, reconnect back with our true essence, our true power, our divinity. And that actually we don't need to give all our power to the ego. And I was getting through that meditation, and specifically inner child work, can really help us reconnect back with the soul and take that power away from the ego, which in essence can help our mental well-being. And what I was getting through was that with inner child work, when we're a child and we come down into the body, our ego isn't very much that developed. So the soul we are living through our soul, and our inner child represents the soul at its purest form. And the soul, that's a part that we can reconnect ourselves to, specifically the reference point of the inner child, because when we were a child, that was when our soul was most free to live in our body and didn't have to do much of this dance with the ego. And this is where the ego was developing. So by connecting back to the inner child, you're connecting back to your truest self, the memories of yourself when your soul was free and there was more of your soul influencing your behaviors and your cognitions. And what I was hearing is that when we connect back to our inner child, we connect back to parts of ourselves again. We regain knowledge. We start loving, embracing, and feeling at one with ourselves again, which then takes the power away from the ego. The ego is about separation, fear, anxiety. And by reconnecting back with ourselves, we take that power away from the ego and we start living from our truest, highest self. And I feel very much called to speak about this on here because specifically with mental health, we can feel very much out of control. We can feel very much like overcome and succumbed by our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our behaviours. And we can feel very much like, I don't know what to do. But I feel like giving this on here today just helps me help you understand that you do have the power to reconnect back with yourself. And it may feel like you can't. And again, that's the ego. We may feel like we can't, or we feel powerless within this, but knowing that you can have the power to do that is something that I really felt during these downloads. I felt so much love, so much oneness, and so much power, and that we are just the soul dancing with the ego. And that is one of our greatest lessons on earth. So I thought I'd just come on here and let you guys know that, and I hope you have a fabulous day. Bye.